The power of Excel comes from the ability to use formulas with it and have it do calculations for you. So we're going to spend a little time talking about how to enter formulas, how to count things, and how to use the logical functions with Excel. So normally, if you just type text in a cell, it's just text. Let me open up a different worksheet here with some numbers in it. So for instance, if I just type the word average in this cell, it's just the word average. If I want to take the average of some numbers, I have to enter a formula. So in order to enter a formula in Excel, we need to first hit the equal sign. Now, everything that appears after the equal sign will be interpreted as a formula. Excel contains an average formula. So let me enter the word average. I should have said average function, that's what I mean. Average. And then it even suggests some functions here, so I'm going to click that. Now, the input to this function is going to be a range of numbers, and you can select a range of numbers a couple of ways. The easiest way is to just drag across what you want the range to be. Let's go ahead and hit enter here and see what Excel gives as the average. 3, sure, that makes sense because 1 plus 1 plus 7 is 9. There's 3 numbers, so the average is 9 divided by 3 is 3. Let's take another look at this formula here. I'm going to double click on that cell. If I double click on it, I can see the formula that we put in there, and you notice that a range of numbers in Excel is given in this way. So each cell has a column indicated by a letter, so this is column A, column B, column C, and so on, and a row indicated by a number, row 1, row 2, and so on. So this cell right here, where my mouse is cell A2, whereas this cell is cell C2. And you see that a range is specified by putting a colon between those numbers. Excel is very clever. It knows when you copy a formula that you probably mean to refer to different data. So let me click this cell right here. I'm going to copy it by hitting Command C, and I'm going to paste it here by hitting Command V. And you notice that it doesn't copy the 3, it gives this other number. Let's double click that and see why it's giving that number. Notice that before we were computing the average of A2 to C2. That was in row 2. When we copy that formula, Excel's guessing that, well, we probably mean to refer to this data now, and so it changed that to A3 to C3. Sometimes that's not the behavior you want. Sometimes you want Excel to not change things when you copy around. You can force Excel to not change things by putting dollar signs in front of them. I'm going to go up to this formula here and put a dollar sign in front of that too, but not a dollar sign in front of anything else. So I'll hit enter there. Now I'm going to copy and paste that into this cell. Now we're getting another strange number. Let's take a look at the formula and see what that might be. All right, so what happened here? Now it's the average of, well, it looks like it's still A2, but now it's C3. So the 2 did not change, but the 3 did change. The second one did change. And you notice that now it's referring to this rectangular array up here. So it's taking the average of everything from this corner down to this corner. What a dollar sign does in Excel is keep Excel from updating that. So if we were to put dollar signs, let's go back up to this one. Whoops. Let's go back up to this one. If we were to put dollar signs in front of that 2 and this 2, and now we're to copy that 3, it would stay as a 3. And if we go in and look at that formula, we notice that Excel is now referring to this data. When we change the row, it did not change what it was referring to. Let's try copying that, but going the other direction now, to here. 4. Why is it getting a 4 now? So let's double click and we can see what data it's referring to. Notice that originally we were referring to these 3 numbers, but when we copied it over a column, it also moved our inputs over a column. If that's not what you want, then you need to put a dollar sign in front of the columns as well. If we try that, now when we copy, we'll get a 3, and we'll notice that this is referring to the same data it originally was. So dollar signs keep Excel from changing the inputs. Okay, so that's a little bit about formulas and copying formulas. Let's go back to our preference list data here. One thing that's going to be really useful for you is the ability to count the number of times something occurs. There's a formula for that, so let's hit equals to enter a formula. The command is countif. And you can click this and it'll give you a little bit of a tip about what you want to put in here. So Excel is expecting first a range and then the criteria. So I'm going to select a range of data by just dragging, for instance. So here I've got in rows 2 through 10. And for the criteria, I'm going to put in quotes the letter A. Excel says 4. So what this is Excel is saying that in this blue input range, the letter A appears 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Naturally, you can change this as much as you want to count all of the letters that occur in any column you desire. In fact, you can even do arithmetic on this. So if you'd like to say, count the number of times the A appears and then multiply it by 3, you can multiply that by 3. We should get the answer 12 here. It's easy to count the number of times that happens in the second column, because if we just copy and paste, notice that because I didn't put any dollar signs in, Excel has gone ahead and moved that to taking as input things from the second column. Another function that will be very useful for you are the logical functions AND and OR. We'll talk about this in class some, but the logical AND function returns the word true as long as both the first input and the second input are true, and it returns false in every other case. The name of the logical AND function is AND. Okay, if you click on that, you'll get a little tip about what to do. So what I need to do is to put in here a test that I want to test whether something and something else is true. Just to play around with this here, I'll click on this cell. Suppose I want to test whether that cell is equal to D, and I separate this with a comma, and the second one is equal to an E. Let's go ahead and hit enter. This should return true because it is the case that the first cell is D and the second cell is E. And it does. Let's copy that down to the next row and think about, before we hit the paste, let's think about what's going to happen. The first cell is D, but the second cell is not E rather, so this should return false. And it does return false. The logical OR function is very similar. Its name is OR. So we can test whether the first cell is D or the second cell is D. This should return true because OR returns true as long as either one or the other or both is true. And indeed it does. The second row here should also return true because either one or the other or both is D. But the next row should return false because it's not the case that either the first or the second is D. As with everything in Excel, you can make these more and more complicated by nesting expressions. So if I want to test whether, let's go down one here. If I want to test whether the first one is D, or the second one is A or B, I can do that with a more complicated expression like this. We read these, whoops. Let's change this to an AND to make it a little more interesting. So this will return true as long as the first one is D and the second one is either A or B. So this should return false.